Yeah, awesome. Let's get started. How you guys doing, Chini Magic family? Welcome to another edition of the Chini Magic podcast. Super excited to have a guest who, in my mind, is one of, I would call you a Swiss Army knife right now, man, because you definitely bring a certain skill set and a certain perspective that is so relevant to our growing ecosystem right now. William Githui, Director of Finance at Moringa School, and formerly Investment Manager at AlphaMundi, right?
Yes.
So you have sat on both sides of the table, if you will, in terms of the what I call the entrepreneurship life cycle or equation, if you will. And so it's super great to have you. I think you're emblematic of where our ecosystem is today, just in terms of where we are in our maturation stage, right? People who have actually done investments, people who have actually been operators.
Yeah.
And now you're seeing a flowering of that and a scaling of that, and it's super exciting because maybe 10 years ago, you would never have heard people with that skill set, right? In our ecosystem. Right now, we have people like yourself. And it's a great time to build a career in Nairobi, in Silicon Savannah, right?
Yeah.
And you're in my view, you represent for me what the future potential of this place is. You and many other people. I see a bright future ahead for you, and I see a bright future ahead for our country, our nation, or for Africa with people like you, kind of driving some of these new realities and new capabilities, bringing them to market. So with that said. Mr. William Githui, welcome to the Chini Magic podcast.
Thank you very much. First of all, Mark, thank you so much for having me. I've had a couple of these podcasts before, and they've been pretty inspiring to just understand entrepreneurial stories and the like. So, really honored to be here today.
Awesome.
Yeah,
you're welcome, dude. You and I have known each other since I started making my move. From the Bay Area to Kenya, and you were instrumental in that process. I remember the first conversation we had. How did we even get connected? Did I just reach out on LinkedIn, or how? What was it?
Actually, I think you just reached out on LinkedIn. I replied. We got onto a call. We talked a bit about the space here. I mentioned one of the companies that we worked with and what you're doing, and I think I connected you to one of the guys there. And I think from there, I have to say, just
one thing led to
another.
Awesome. So you connected with Kane
at
Trigger Foods.
Yes.
Who became a good buddy, and he's on our advisory board for Impact Africa Network.
Yes.
So I gotta say, man, like I said, we have a history, and I think even a brighter future.
Yep, I agree.
Super excited about it. But anyway, so the way the podcast works, as I've already mentioned to you, is very narrative driven, because that's the easiest way to kind of communicate anything for the most part. So, we just tell the audience, your background, where you went to school, maybe where you grew up, where you went to school, and what your trajectory was to your career. And then we'll kind of take it from there.
All right, cool. So I went to school here in Kenya. So actually, I'm one of those guys. I've not gone outside yet to get education, but I just might moving forward. So I did my undergraduate degree in finance in United States International University, USIU, Kenya. And I completed in 2012, but I started working before completion. And I majored in finance and also started doing my CFAs. Of which I'm like kind of midway of actually trying to finish those off. Right off the bat, I started off actually working for my dad in recruitment, of which I did for about 1 year, and that's where I kind of got a feeling of, these are the kind of careers that are actually doing well. These are the guys who are earning well. These are the careers where there's this much demand. I could kind of see from a very high level from the kind of queries that we're getting that people want these types of skills, and this one mainly in like investments, IT related, and very very senior positions in product, FMCG, etc. Then on, I went to investment banking for where I was there for about almost 4 years. Investment bank here locally called FIDA Investment Bank. They started off by doing equity research. This is like research on the companies listed on the stock exchange, giving out recommendations, building out the financial models, and the types of pricing that this stock should be at. Then finally moved into a more investment bank kind of a corporate finance role, where I started doing like rights issues, I did the rights issue for Kengen, Jamii Bora Bank, and a couple of other companies on the side. And that's when the interest to work with companies more intimately actually arose within me. And just like towards the end of that was actually towards 2015, I made the shift from that investment bank to AlphaMundi Group.
Okay.
And in AlphaMundi Group, it was a really, really good experience. I was employee number 2, and we were right at the forefront of trying to build out the Kenya portfolio at that point in time. I think we only had about 3 or 4 companies at the point of time. At my point of exit, we had almost 12 at that
So you
point
grew
in
that
time.
portfolio from 0, essentially?
Yeah. There were a few, 2 or 3 legacy investments that we found, but then we actually brought in a couple of others. Sector agnostic, fintech, logistics, microinsurance, FMCG, renewable energy, agriculture. So it was a really good experience being at the forefront of building out that portfolio.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's take a step back. You talked about your experience working with the investment bank, and that exposed you to a whole other kind of. I guess what are the lessons you took from that? What were the insights you took? That clearly from your working with your dad, you kind of were able to get a high level view of where the opportunities were, right? So that kind of informed your decision making in terms of where you might want to place yourself career-wise, right?
Yeah.
And then you chose after that to do the investment bank thing.
Yeah.
What were the key takeaways from that experience? What were some of the lessons or insights you gained from that?
That's a really good question. I think I can provide both on a professional and a personal level. So I think on a professional level, it was always to take a step back. In investment banking, the training is quite rigorous, especially if you want to be like amongst the top dogs, if you want to be a voice that's to be heard, not just locally, but internationally. And most of our clients were international, big funds from the States and Europe, etc. And in that type of training, you're always taking a step back. You're always looking at things from a very macro, eagle-eyed point of view of where are the tectonic shifts happening.
The global trends.
Exactly.
And stuff like that.
Global trends, and also industry-specific and company-specific trends.
Right.
And always taking that step back. Also, right now in my operational role, always helps.
Right.
And you're always trying to look at where's the inflation heading, where's the economy heading, what's the political situation, and how are we gonna position ourselves just to be in the right place, right time, when what we think is gonna happen happens.
Awesome.
So that was from a professional perspective. I think from a personal perspective, it was more of there's actually value in actually going deep at times to better understand your companies that you're working with. And I think that's what made me make the shift to actually become, to go into AlphaMundi to become an investment manager. Because if you are too high level of the time, speaking just, GDP figures, etc., you can really, it's very easy for you to lose touch on what really needs to happen on the ground.
Right.
For a company to move towards that direction.
Right.
And when I was working with companies on the corporate finance side in FIDA Investment Bank, what was happening is that I had to get really intimate with the management and the board of directors and a few key employees to really understand, this is what you really want to achieve. If you really want to achieve this, then I think this would be the best capital structure for you. Or you may need to reduce costs on this side, or you may need to get this type of technology to make you more nimble, etc. I think that was the biggest takeaway, that it's not just a touch and go, it's a relationship that you build over time.
Interesting. So you were in this environment where you had to take the 10,000 foot view, but you also needed to actually get in close, intimate kind of engagement with your investees, so to speak, right? And then now AlphaMundi maybe even made that much more intimate. Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So with AlphaMundi.
And what does AlphaMundi do? Just maybe describe a little bit of what they do.
Yeah, for sure. So AlphaMundi, it's a Swiss-based impact investor, and they have operations in Switzerland, North America, and East Africa for now. They focus mainly on impact investments in the renewable energy space, in the agriculture space, but they also are a bit sector agnostic. A bit of their portfolio can go towards other sectors like fintech, microinsurance, logistics, etc.
Define impact investing from your perspective, because this is always a very controversial thing.
That's a very controversial topic. Actually, it's quite a broad definition.
Right.
I think people have these days, but how I say it is investing in a social good.
Okay.
And this is anything investing.
So basically investing in Africa. Let's
You could say invest in Africa. Investing in emerging markets. Maybe let's say that because
as far as I'm concerned, emerging markets is Africa, man. Shit.
There's South America. There's the Mexicos and the Narcos. I'm sure you guys watch Narcos. Those guys need investment too.
They're doing a different kind of investing.
So it's basically just investing in emerging markets or sub-Saharan Africa, how Mark likes to put it, but also in investing towards sustainability. And that's the biggest premise. And in that sense, you may be willing to compromise returns, just maybe below market returns. For some people, they're willing to compromise that. And for others, they believe that you can actually get both of them at the same time. And in AlphaMundi, we were of the latter opinion. And we managed to do that mainly through debt. And we were
so your belief was you could do good and make money at market rate.
At market rate.
Yeah, this is a very interesting thing. This impact investing thing.
Yeah.
Because there's the capital structures around the world, right, have shifted in the last few years, like to this impact investing theme, right? And a lot of times it's a positioning thing, right? You're a fund manager, you want to access that money.
You want to access that money.
It's always a storytelling thing and a positioning thing. So, but anyway, I guess maybe let's dig a little deeper and say, what are some of the, frictions, drawbacks that the impact investing space has, right? What?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think what I'll do, maybe I'll just take a step back again and give it some sort of analogy on what impact investing could be.
Right.
Like for example, right now in Kenya, we had, it's just been repealed, but we had the interest rate cap.
Right.
And with this interest rate cap, we had the big traditional, big dogs, traditional banks stepping back away from the normal Wanjikos and the normal Wananchi from giving them loans. But there's someone else who stepped in, seeing an opportunity to do so. And in that sense, you could almost, in a way, define that as impact investing, because these guys came in and gave the little guys access to funding when the big dogs wouldn't. And they managed to make money off of that. Yes, there's a bit of a gray area. Yes, it's exploitative, but there's
in what sense is it exploitative? Just curious, because it sounds like it's all good.
Yeah, it sounds like it's all good, but people have said that some of the interest rates are ridiculous. And when you do the annual returns on these interest rates, they're almost like 300%.
Whoa.
Annualized.
Whoa.
But some people have actually.
So it's basically, it's almost like I would rather get some money from the narcos at this rate.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're really sucking my life.
Exactly. And there's one reason why these guys stepped away. The big dogs, because they thought.
When you say the big dogs, you mean
this is the traditional banks. We're talking about the KCB, the equities, and why they didn't step up to the smaller Wananchi, which they're just starting to kind of do so now. Which I think they're kind of behind the waves of like the Talas and the branch etc. But basically, they thought that the risk profile didn't match the kind of return that they were getting, and because that was because they were constrained by the interest rate cap.
So they were constrained, but these non-regulated. These non-regulated guys, businesses, startups, were not regulated by the same interest cap.
Exactly.
Because it only applied to banks.
It only applied to banks. And banks take deposits from the public company. Right. And these guys, they normally don't. It's their own funded money.
It's own funding.
And they can do it.
It's private money, basically.
Exactly. And if you take a look back and you step back apply that kind of concept into impact investing, in a way, it's almost kind of like the same thing. Because most of what happens in impact investing, most of the companies you'll find are very idea stage, early stage, need some grant funding, and there's no way, it's very hard that a bank is going to come in, look at those cash flows, look at your losses, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to give you
that just doesn't work.
$100,000 loan.
And they probably don't have the structure for it in terms of the people capacity process.
Exactly. No, even the expertise, because they are only very used to looking at cash flow positive businesses, and two, do you have collateral? That's it. Like, do you have a car? Do you have a plot going in Rero? And can you give me that logbook? Can you give me that title deed? There. Cool. There's your 50,000 shilling loan, etc. And impact funds, in a way, are kind of like this Talas and branch that we're seeing. These guys are willing to actually absorb those fast losses. And by doing so, depending if you're an equity,
they'll price them into their risk structure.
Exactly.
Hence the 300%. Which in a way you can What do you think? So do you think, given the risk-adjusted return, is it too, like, is the risks high enough to justify those interest rates? Is one.
To be honest, I actually believe they are.
Okay.
To be honest, I actually believe they are, because these are, if you again taking the analogy, this is you're lending to someone who you have no record with.
Right.
No record of. You're just looking at his texts.
Yeah.
From M-Pesa,
Yeah.
and you don't know where he lives, you don't know anything about him, you don't know whether he gets a constant salary or not, or constant income stream. You just, a guy has walked in, he's applied, and you're giving him a loan.
Right.
There's not even a proper way to price that. So actually, to be honest.
So maybe that's a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is an evolving kind of space, because at the end of the day, it behooves somebody to reduce that risk, and that's having a better situation, better kind of solution, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Of course, data is a problem, but at the end of the day, it's like, but it's not in the short term. It's kind of not in the interest of the company who's the startup, right? Because they're operating based on where they are and the inputs that they have to evaluate that risk, right?
Yeah.
But my sense is maybe we are moving towards a much more transparent, a much more controllable situation that will minimize the risk profile and reduce that interest rate. I think we're just looking at a facet of the market as it is today, right?
Yeah.
I need to manage my risk. I don't have, this is all I have. I have a blunt instrument, and I need to have a high interest rate. Are we going into where we can actually have much more for want of a better term, much more surgical approach, reduce that gap between my risk and therefore reduce the interest rate?
Yes, I think we're definitely. I think the past 24 to 36 months we've made leaps and bounds in doing that.
Okay.
And I think this is mainly, we have a couple of more credit reference bureaus, but I think they can only help to a certain extent. What's really helping is technology, and how technology is actually helping to throw out a wider net of the data that could be captured, that could be used to actually calculate the risk that this person has.
Right.
And I think those types of data structures weren't really existent maybe 3-4 years ago. But they're actually now becoming more and open existent. More people holding various types of data are more open to share. And if once that works and technology is brought in, and I think this is how the talent branch do it, these guys have over 1,000 data points on a person just by etc logging into their social media and checking their texts and doing and seeing other things, and they're able to see this guy is a guy who actually pays his rent on time. This guy is actually a person who does who pays off his other M-Shwari loan on time. This is a guy we can actually loan to, and we can only loan to them this much. So yes, I actually think we are moving towards that direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So anyway, you were talking about AlphaMundi and how it got you closer to the operational side, evaluating individual investments. How different was that from Faida Investment Bank?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think in AlphaMundi, and I think everyone still has to learn and iterate on how you do the due diligence of these companies. You have to go really wide. It's depth and breadth at the same time. And what I'm talking about is with Faida Investment Bank, what we were doing before is just a very high level on financials, just like a very high level discussions with the board and the management. And I'm like, I have my inputs for my financial model. I can go put these numbers in, and I can give out my high level assumption of what this price should be. With AlphaMundi, it kind of forces you to actually spend time with this company. And you're talking about days or even weeks with this company, trying to understand each and every department, each and every nook and crook, their processes, what works for them, what hasn't worked, their learnings, and what they've always done well and they've improved on. And that involves a lot of on-site interviews, on-site double checking or the kind of documents that they're using. You have to talk to the people behind the scenes, not just the employees, but you have to talk to the customers. You have to talk to their suppliers. You're talking to their equity investors, the guys who have invested in them and the guys who want to invest in them. So you're doing due diligence all around.
All stakeholders.
So it's
all
a full,
touch points, basically.
Exactly. So it's a full 360 that you're doing on this company. And you have to talk to everyone that interacts with it to actually get a good feel of, yes, this this is the company that we want to invest in. Because if you hear a supplier saying, oh, no, this guy is only paying me once in 6 months, and because of that, actually, I don't think I'm going to supply them at the next batch.
It's a risk. It's a risk.
That's already a red flag. Yeah. If you have a customer saying, oh, I tried this, but when I sent this with their app, it only came once or twice, and all the other times it hangs, etc.
Yep.
Then that's a risk. That's a risk. Obviously, the company itself won't tell you.
Right.
That's something that
you got to check with the customers, man.
Exactly.
And so this is interesting. So, what are some of the patterns that you noted about entrepreneurship in this market, right? Like you've evaluated a lot of businesses, a lot of founders. What are some of the things what are the learnings that you take away? You say, okay, these are the types of entrepreneurs we have in this space, and these are the gaps that they maybe categorize them, and then say, if you can unpack that for us, Kidogo.
Oh, that's a really that's a really touchy subject, to be honest.
Look, reality is reality. It's not going to go away because we don't talk about it.
True.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
And it's not about you. It's you're reporting like what you've seen.
Exactly.
There,
right? So to be honest, I've seen entrepreneurs on both extremes, and very few of them in the middle. And I'm seeing some really good entrepreneurs who actually have a really good grip on operations, but not a really good grip on actually how to sell themselves and how to fundraise.
Okay.
And it's been very heartbreaking to see someone you really want to support not being able to actually fundraise and get support from other people. So
I'm good on operations, but I can't attract capital because there's a certain way you have to sell yourself.
This is
So define what is that?
So
you're an investor, right? So how does that happen? What is missing?
So, that's a good question. So I think what's really missing is the storytelling and the numbers that support the storytelling behind it.
Okay.
And I think some of the entrepreneurs that haven't really gotten capital up to date is they don't know really how to tell the story, how to sell the bigger picture of what the company is doing,
right,
or could go if it gets more capital.
Right.
And most of them have just kind of said, like, oh, they kind of like really focus on the operational short-term nice victories or efficiencies. I'm like, oh my gosh, my product is better than my competitors because it does 5 things. He can put a table and says it does 5 ticks and does 2 ticks and 3 X's.
Right.
And that's cool, that's great. But I think they haven't really, again, taken a step back to see what is the larger problem that you're fixing in either your little bubble, your little sector, your little company, your little economy of that particular sector that the company is working in, and how can you really change or move the needle if capital can come in and you can change a user's life, you can change the company's fortunes, you can change your returns to an investor, etc.
Okay.
And there's some people who just haven't. I don't think they've ever had anyone talk to them like that, or ever had anyone speak like that, so they wouldn't know in the first place how to go about that. So I think some of them may need coaching and training on just how to sell themselves, sell the company, so that they can get they can at least attract some funding.
Okay.
Come their way.
What I'm hearing from you is like it sounds almost as if people have a much more they're much more tactical, and they're not as strategic. And strategy I feel almost always requires a bigger picture, right? You're trying to go somewhere, right? Bigger than your current local maxima, if you will, right? And I've always tried to understand why this is the case. I mean, we have come from an environment where people have, for the most part, small businesses relative to where the sources of capital are coming from in terms of the comparables, right?
Yeah.
Big markets provide big opportunity, and so I guess I try to kind of understand what the dividing line is here. Why can we say that in our market people are less kind of have that view of scale potential? They don't look at it that way. They look at it kind of what I can do in my limited space, a business that I can stretch my arms and reach the ends of. What's the thing? What's the dividing line here? What makes that mindset? What reinforces that mindset, sets it up, and keeps it that way? Do you have a theory on this at all? Maybe even I can say a little bit more to the point. Do you see, when you see people who have that strategic, good storytelling, is there a dividing line? And here I'm going towards local founders versus people who've maybe traveled, or even people who've come back from abroad. I mean, is there something there?
Yeah, I think I can answer that question maybe two ways. So I think the very first one is I think it's more of a behavioral thing, in the sense that for these companies that have been running too small, to be honest, most of the time you're on survival mode.
Okay.
And if you're on survival mode, it's very hard for you to see past 2-3 months from now, or past 6 months, or even see a year down the line.
It's not relevant almost, right?
It's almost not relevant, because you are, to be honest, you're almost firefighting almost each and every day. The thought of you growing actually even scares you, because you can't even handle what's really already in place right now.
Yeah.
And because you have an amazing business, but you're always in survival mode. Maybe like some suppliers are up in your door, they need to be paid, and you have like large receivables. Guys are telling you need to wait 3 or 4 months. Those are the kind of things that will make you not really think about, oh my gosh, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get out of this rut?
Right.
And it's more of like a behavioral economics thing,
right,
in a way.
Right.
And actually, this has also been demonstrated in I think there are a few studies that have been done on why people are stuck in poverty, because your view is just here. I need to survive.
I need to get to tomorrow.
Yeah,
I need to eat food.
I need to eat food. That's it. Like if that doesn't work,
don't tell me about CG vision and this.
Yeah, don't tell me about, oh man, I can change Nairobi or Kenya and the market is this 2 billion opportunity. I don't want to know about
What's that?
Yeah.
That means nothing to me.
I need my 500 shillings to get to work, to eat, to go home, and to get something for my kid. That's what you're thinking about. And also, you can apply that into a business sense.
Totally, because at the end of the day, a business is a human being.
Exactly. Yeah.
Doing a thing, right?
It's doing a thing. Yeah. So if you're always focused on like firefighting and in survival mode, it's gonna be very, very hard for you to pull yourself out again. I keep on saying this, but you always think about like things strategically.
Right.
And to your second question about like, am I seeing a difference between local founders and guys who have been more exposed or traveled? To be honest, there is a bit of a difference. And the differences are mainly coming in, again, in what I say, storytelling, and number two, being able to be more strategic than operational. And I think the guys who have like really, really traveled, have probably studied abroad, these guys have actually mastered or have worked with people that have mastered the art of actually being really good managers and getting like really good people to help them with things operationally. And then them stepping back and just being like a vision carrier and a storyteller and like attracting capital to keep on running the business. And also another thing I think I found that people leverage on is mentors. People who have actually, gone through this path. They have had the same problems you've had. So this is someone that, can really, really shorten your learning curve.
Totally.
And you don't have to like make the same mistakes that they did.
Right.
So I think those are the two biggest differences between I see what local guys who haven't really have had as much exposure,
right.
And a few guys who have actually been outside and probably have come back, or probably even like foreigners who have actually come to set up here. So it's one of the things. I'm not saying that is the one. That's what really sets them apart. But those are the few things that I've seen that have actually helped some of the guys who have been successful in scaling up their companies.
So fundamentally, it's a behavioral thing where, your constraints determine your state of mind, pretty much.
True.
And then exposure also gives you this other different way of how to move through the development of anything you're creating, right? That there's a distinction between, you actually value talent in a sense, right? If because you've seen how people apply talent, attract talent, retain talent, and they use that as the means to move their business forward, to move their enterprise forward, to move their vision forward. And then they become much more, okay, this is my role. I'm the face of the company. I'm attracting capital. So there's that kind of structure that people coming from, who are returnees or people who've been exposed to the Western way of doing things have. Yeah. It's interesting. Cool. So let's talk a little bit now about what are some of the mistakes and misconceptions investors have, right? Talking about your AlphaMundi experience, maybe impact investors or people who, because most of the money is coming from abroad, and also maybe even a misconception around why local capital doesn't participate. So those are two different things, right? So one is, generally speaking, what are some of the misconceptions, mistakes that people who are deploying capital in emerging markets have?
All right, so I can start with the first one. So in regards to, I think some of the mistakes that they have is that most of them actually think that Silicon Savannah works the way the real Savannah works. The Savannah, what is it?
Silicon Savannah and Silicon Valley.
Yes, so they think things work the way in Silicon Savannah the same way it does in Savannah, in African Savannah. What is it called? Savannah Valley.
Silicon Valley.
Silicon Valley.
Okay,
Yes.
right.
So
things work in Nairobi should work the same way in San Francisco. Let's
exactly. Yes, thank you. You're tagging for me. That will help. And I think the biggest misconception I've seen is that things will just work with a snap of a finger, and they haven't really been on the ground here to really understand.
As they say here, it is different on the ground.
On the ground, exactly. It's different, Sana. And this type of remote control.
Remote control, I love that.
Yeah.
You know what I call it? Air conditioned investing. You're moving in San Francisco saying,
I've sent you the cash. I just want to see the quarterly updates on a nice PowerPoint and things like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, you will be shown. You will be shown things.
Yeah.
And I think most of the times is that people haven't come actually here to set up a local team. And I think not just for AlphaMundi, I've seen the funds that have set up local teams here have made far more headway than the guys who have who jet in once or twice. A quarter or 3 times a quarter.
That's not investing. That's speculation.
Exactly. And at what point will you actually ever form that intimate relationship
not gonna happen.
With that company?
Insights that you develop, cultural nuances.
Exactly. When are you ever gonna get comfortable with the supplier of a pipeline company and him telling you, and boss, this guy has never supplied to me. Like I know they brought you to talk to me, but then you basically these guys they bring me things that are already spoiled. They bring me things. There's no one who's gonna tell you that.
They're gonna smile with you and tap you on the back and say,
this
quick money.
And you can only do that once you're here on the ground, and you have either a person who knows the ecosystem so well, has the contacts, has the partnerships, knows how things work here, knows the regulatory environments, the investments that need to be made that can make that difference. So I think those are the biggest. That's one of them. I think the second maybe mistake that they may make is they believe that something that has shown early signs of promise is going to scale up
at the same rate.
So we've seen
they're used to in SF or the Western world.
Exactly. And we've seen a lot of companies that have had a lot of fanfare and hype because when we started off in this country or in this particular product, we were experiencing 40% month-on-month growth, but also on a very, very small level. Once you try and scale that, and now 2 to 3 years down the line, you're seeing, we scaled it. But
the cost of big numbers, yeah.
Exactly.
It doesn't. You don't grow at the rate you're growing when you have at a certain stage, right?
Exactly.
It's just makes sense, right? It's math.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And that's when you really realize, the unit economics at scale and the type of quality you want and the type of price point that you want it to work doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
And I think some of them have to be cognizant to that fact that some of these things will take time.
Right.
Yeah, and you need to account for the things that you don't know because you won't know until you start them. And many people are just like, it's okay. I think we figured it out through the pilot, so we're gonna
through the pilot.
through the pilot, and so if we're just gonna throw $5 million into this thing, that's it. The $5 million times 2 equals 10, and $5 million times 3 could equal to 7 or 6 or even 0 at the end of the day.
Right.
So you just have to be.
So it's basically not a linear path to outcomes.
No. Yeah.
In the end, I can talk about this just based on working in the States in startups, right? The Fortune 500. You know your market. Okay, you have. How we talk about SME here, and sometimes I'm like, okay, so who's in the SME? when you're a startup in the US, right, you can very granularly define a market. And even in that small market, let's say it's education, let's say it's healthcare, even healthcare is too broad. Any market you define, there'll be a big enough market pool of customers and a path to actually access them to where you can build a sizable company and exit even at $20 million, which nowadays people are talking about unicorns. Most things don't become unicorns. Silicon Valley has been built on the back of small acquisitions, right? And if you start a company and you work on it for a couple of years, 3 years, and you spent maybe $1 million putting it together and you acquired for 20 million, and the investor takes, I don't know, maybe 5 million of that, $15 million is a pretty good situation. That's life-changing money, right?
Yep.
So I guess my point is, we don't have a very linear path to outcomes, right?
Yeah.
Because, and why, maybe take it from there.
Yeah,
based on what you've seen.
Well, that's very true. And I think another thing that's very hard for them to see here is exit opportunities.
Yeah, that's another thing.
That's another
pretty
thing.
much.
We don't have an active, and this is coming from someone who has been in the capital markets.
Yeah.
We don't have really active capital markets,
right.
Actually.
So you have to have alternative structures?
You have to, yeah. So you're either gonna have to start structuring some, self-liquidating investments, or you're just gonna have to find a second primary buyer who's much bigger than you, a funder who's bigger than you, or a company that may just fit, and you may give some synergies in quotes.
Right.
That's something else that's disputed these days.
Right.
And I think just being cognizant of that fact that when you're getting into this, it's not an in-out.
Yeah.
You're not here to put in your $2 million and then 36 months down the line you're moving $10 million.
Right.
We've seen in the past almost 10 years that those types of exits have been happening very few and apart. Transactions have happened. And you have to stick through it, especially as the company goes through tough times.
Right.
And most of these companies have gone through tough times where they may come back to you saying, okay, the original plan didn't work. We need an additional X amount for us to get to that level because we've learned this and this and this now.
Yeah.
And we've seen some of these really big companies with, they've raised X and X millions of dollars, but then they're not break even because they spent so much money and they had the added cushion to do so. But they spent so much money making so many mistakes to the point that they managed to actually now, okay, cool, now we got it, now we know what the product is, we know what the right organizational structure is, now we know how to run lean, but you've done that after burning almost $50 million.
Wow.
And once you get into that point, you have a new entrant coming in and they're just saying
they've learned everything you've done.
And they'll set up with $3-4 million and very soon they'll start eating away at your market share.
So thank you for talking about our strategy.
Impact
Africa Network. And I was just going to ask you, of course, to the extent you can generalize that statement and say, as an ecosystem which constitutes all these startups and all these learnings, how we have moved further down the road than where we were 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. So there's opportunity for what you call second followers, fast followers, to actually do what you're saying, right? How would you if you can, quantify that across domains, industries? So one is, specifically to industry how it works, right? These are the pitfalls, this is what you need to do, a specific thing that you're trying to do. One is just general. This is how you mitigate risk in terms of market research, all the things you can do before you actually start plowing money into a situation. One is more generalized, one is more industry specific. Where do you think we are in that curve? If you were to compare, if you can give us some kind of context in terms of our maturation around knowing how to not blow money as an ecosystem. In general.
I think, to be honest, we're a bit far off, to be honest. I think this is mainly because, even if you can do your research, etc., I feel like the people who have gone before you, who are much larger, are now cognizant that they made things easier for the people to follow them.
Right.
And what I've seen happen is that people who have gone before you start now focusing on, if efficiency, optimization, making themselves more lean, bringing the costs down to a point where the prices are just so uncompetitive and it doesn't make sense for a new competitor to come in. And by doing so, they try to create a moat. So, and I'm seeing this now starting to happen with a few other companies where like you'll see like in let's say in renewable energy or even in agriculture or even in logistics and distribution. Some of the companies that have gone ahead, yes, they want money, but then they realize, but now they're trying to build a moat around them, either through like
pricing.
end-to-end, exactly, pricing, end-to-end, capturing the full supply and value chain and controlling that and locking in the required resources or raw materials that needs to happen. And a new business trying to come up will have to be super nimble to be able to outmaneuver this kind of defense strategies that these bigger companies that have put up. And being nimble means, wow, it does mean imagination and creativity at the highest level. Like you have to, it's either you tap into your networks, you're trying to form partnerships with other people to actually counter what these bigger companies are doing.
Right.
And you
And
can
I
do
think,
so with
yeah,
better,
go ahead.
you can do so with like better customer service. So you can do so, yes, even with faster reaction times. You can do so probably even at the same pricing, or maybe slightly more, but you're adding slightly more benefits. You need to be creative with it for you to actually counter what these bigger companies.
Yeah, I mean, the way I think about businesses, I guess, okay, well, you always want to be in a business. If you look at the history of business, big companies tend to always somehow not get disrupted, but some of their market share over time gets eaten away in certain areas where somebody's doing something better and more efficiently. So maybe not going through the front door, but coming in through the side and that type of thing. That's just, I think, the evolution of business. And but anyway, let's kind of stop being philosophical about that and kind of get to the nitty gritty here. So now, Moringa, you've been at Moringa for how long?
No, just over a year.
Okay.
Yeah, just over a year.
Cool. And you left the investment side to come to the operational side.
Yes.
That's a very interesting kind of. Why did you make that decision? Because usually people move, I think, the other direction in general. You would say people come from operational side and then become investors, because being an investor appears to be easier, but it probably not in our market.
That is true.
Because it's not what you call remote control investing. Yeah, you have to. But anyway, so you made this move, and what's that been like? Well, first of all, why did you make that decision?
So that's a good question. I think personally, I was very happy being an investor, to be honest. So that it was something that was pushing me away. I was very intrigued by the challenges the operational challenges that our companies offer, especially a company that has so much promise to grow. And I wanted to be part of that story. I wanted to understand, okay, what are these pitfalls? Like, yes, I think you can only see them to a certain extent when you're
from
outside,
the outside
as an investor. But once you get in, that's when you really know, oh my gosh, there's so much work to be done here for you to get to a level where people are looking at you like, yeah, you're someone I want to invest in, or yeah, that's a product or service that I want to use. And that challenge really appealed to me. And to be honest, it's not been easy. It's the challenge it's the challenge and much more that I got that greeted me in the door once I came in. And yeah, so actually looking back, I was in a very privileged position to be an investor.
It's much easier, right?
I feel like it made me a bit easier, not like very easy, but it was a bit easier sitting on the other side, asking questions, sitting in the board, just saying, yes, I think
this should happen.
I think this should happen. I think
now you have a whole other respect for.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs, people who build companies at any scale. Actually, I have so much respect for them. Because things are easier said than done.
Totally.
So yeah, as an investor, it's easier for you to sit in the boardroom and say, oh, I think why don't we just reduce this cost by 20% and become profitable? But for you, but to the point you're getting that, the kind of repercussions and the mosaic effect of doing that.
The systemic impact.
It's so huge.
Right.
That first of all, it has to be phased out. There's so many parties that you need to discuss,
communications,
communicate, align before such a thing happens. And I think being on this other side now, has actually made me cognitive of the kind of what we just used to throw about the words efficiency, alignment, optimization, process mapping. We used to throw
these big words, buzzwords.
Yeah, those big buzzwords, and now when you get in, you're just like, whoa, this thing is actually it's a whole other thing. It's like studying one subject matter in like 5 different ways in 5 different situations that have all answers, all look right in your head, and you need to decide which one is best for the company. And that takes a lot of work.
That's not easy.
Takes a lot of work.
That's not easy at all. Yeah. So what has been what have you? I guess maybe you kind of hit on it. One thing you've had to unlearn coming from the investment side. Just I know you've kind of talked about a bunch of them, but just one thing that in general, like you've had to unlearn.
I think one of the things I've had to unlearn is, I think don't take everything at face value. To be honest, you always have to look past that and see what's the real story behind this number. And why you always have to ask the questions, why is a product like this in the first place? What involved for things to get to this point? Don't
what's the story behind?
What's the story behind where we are and where we're going?
Right.
And I think as an investor, you tend to just be told, oh, it's okay, we decided to go this route. And like, okay, because it makes more money. Okay, and then you're told a very high level answer, oh, we discovered it was much easier because we saved X and X costs. Okay, that's cool. But now when you come into the other side, you now have to figure out, like I was talking about earlier, what are what's the repercussion on all the other elements that went into this when you decided to go this route or to start this new route or to stop these other routes. And that takes so much of people's time trying to figure that out, to be honest. So I think asking tougher questions is the thing that I had to learn. Asking tougher and deeper questions is what I had to learn.
And what surprised you the most about being an operator, about on the operational side?
That we take for granted what laying a foundation means.
Okay.
And I think for me that's been the most important, like in my department specifically and in the company specifically. Laying a foundation is like one of the most paramount things that you can do to set yourself up for growth.
Okay. Give us an example of what that means maybe in your department. For example, what does laying a foundation mean?
So like in your department, for example, you may come in and you may find, like this has been working. Like it's been working, but in a sort of a clumsy manner.
Ad hoc way.
Yeah, in a kind of like an ad hoc, clumsy way. And then you realize that if we are to hit, let's say we want to triple or do times 10 our numbers next year, then you realize and you start working backwards and like, oh my gosh, there's no way this process is even going to break if we just increase it times 3.
Right.
And when you start realizing these things early enough, you start bringing in people and systems early enough to fix this problem before you're dealing with it when you don't need to be dealing with it.
Right.
And this is especially like in my department. You're thinking about like a proper ERP, a proper person who's coming, to implement policies, proper financial manuals, etc. Things that are making things quick, fast, easy to move, accurate, timely, etc. And when you're doing that on a small scale, it's very hard for you to think, at some point I may need to bring in, let's say, a financial controller and pay them X amount. Thinking financial controllers are they're cheap. But no, to get a really good, like let's say, financial controller who knows what they're doing, who's going to set up a proper accounting system, a proper capacity in the team to handle the types of transactions that you envision in the next 12 to 24 months. That takes time. They need to come in, get themselves, understand the business, orient themselves, then build in the processes. So by the time it's 12, 24 months down the line, these guys have had so much of building that they know, okay, cool, we can now withstand the pressure that's going to come with increased numbers.
Yeah, so that's amazing. So these are some of the kind of skills that I would say kind of growing in our ecosystem, right? People understanding how to put the right structures that can support the building that you're setting up, the skyscraper that you're trying to put in place. And again, it's so interesting because the when to bring those kind of capabilities into your organization is also another kind of very interesting dance. You gotta kind of figure that out. So what's been your experience with that? Like, when do you bring certain resources in? Have you been exposed to that decision point of?
Yeah, definitely. I have been exposed to it. I think we go through it all the time because we have like some really, really big. We call them in Moringa, we call them big, hairy, audacious goals.
Jim Collins.
And it's quite a balancing act because you're just really trying to look at the resources that you have right now and what you can accommodate and what's like super important for you to what's like a non-negotiable and what's like a nice to have. And once you really drill down on this is a non-negotiable and this is a nice to have, you focus on the non-negotiable and you focus on all the resources and energies needed to bring that non-negotiable in place. So if you need to go back to your investor and tell them, look, I had not anticipated for this earlier, but for us to go to where we're going, and that's a non-negotiable, we need to have this in place. We need funds for this, etc. And I think that's, again, always in that mindset of always trying to step back and working backwards from where you want to go to where you are right now, and trying to put those structures in place early enough. So you always have to have those guiding principles around what is like super, super important right now and what can wait. And that's it's going to give you a bit of guidance as to
how to make decisions.
Exactly.
Okay. And so variability, just kind of the dynamics of working on the operational side of a growing entity. What's that experience been? Like how fast things change, how dynamic is the environment?
It's very, very wow. It's I think, to be honest, where I work is one of the most fast-paced environments ever. And I say this because we have done so much in the past 12, 13 months, and even before I joined the company, I've done so much. And the pressure is real in terms of like the timelines and the goals that we want to meet. And obviously, we try our very best to provide a conducive environment. But if you're a pioneer in doing something, and there are no close comparables to draw benchmarks to, or people who have done exactly what you're doing, and I think that's a case for many entrepreneurs out there as well. You'll find yourself questioning yourself so much as to what direction to take, and you'll find yourself groping in the dark for any ounce of proof points or data to get there. And that's one element. And then you throw in another element, throw a spanner into the works of the business is pivoting in different ways that you did not imagine even 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And these pivots are happening in very, very
rapid fashion.
Very rapidly. You're having very short intervals between these pivots, each and every time, things that you did not anticipate and change. And you're always finding yourself, okay, that was 3 months ago, now it's 2 months now. I brought in this person, I made this investment. I don't feel like, do we repurpose it? Do we sell it off, or do we, now that we have this person on board, can we optimize on another scale? Maybe it's not needed, or maybe now we need another person. And to be honest, it's very hard. It's very hard, and we've had case of people getting very tired because they're doing like 4 or 5 jobs, and that's what happens in a startup. Because you'll have like 4 or 5 jobs, you'll be pulled in 5 different directions, and it gets to a point where you need to say, okay, cool, now we need a person to solely focus on this and run with this, so that I can focus my attention on this. So yeah, it's quite the balancing act, really chaotic, but it can be fun. It can be fun. Yeah.
This is so interesting.
There'll be a lot of emotions going around the room. To be honest, there'll be a lot of emotions going around the room. It's never easy. It's never easy. And I'm sure to all the entrepreneurs listening out there, mad respect to all of you guys who have managed to get to this point.
Right.
You guys need to come on this podcast and tell us how you guys managed to do it. Because
those stories help, man. Because it helps people say, man, I'm not crazy. So and so is going. William's going through this.
Yeah. And you find yourself becoming a subject expert on one area. Like I almost at a certain point became like the lawyer. I was like, no, that clause doesn't make sense. This clause doesn't make sense. But I'm supposed to be wearing my finance hat. But now, because I'm being pulled to a totally different direction. Right. Some things start falling through the cracks.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's you who has to pick them up.
Pretty much.
So there is a lot of frustration in doing this. There'll be a lot of chaos.
And this is a great kind of, so one of the things I try to do as we are doing our own thing, building our own startup and growing, is helping our team get comfortable with this variability, because it's not what we are taught to expect work will look like, right? And so so this is one of the things I kind of try and immunize our people with, the variability, because things are changing, they're dynamic, they're moving, and so on and so forth. So I guess the question I would ask for you is like, given how people are educated in our space, in our world, right? How big is the gap between what you're experiencing right now and the mindset of people who are coming into the work world or working at a startup, right? Corporate is very structured. People come from very structured environments, education-wise, and then you're thrown into this thing, right? How big is that gap between the mindset of where people are coming into the work world, or even coming from corporate, so to speak?
I think I'm happy you're asking me that, because I work at Moringa. And Moringa, one of the big things we actually teach, we teach you how to learn. So we actually, the thing is, we teach you how to adapt to new situations, to understand new concepts, because the way the learning modules are done is that they're always throwing new things at you, and you're teaching yourself how to learn. Yes, you're being given content, but you need to go above and beyond and practice and do things and search for.
Become a craftsperson.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the big elements that is needed from someone moving from a corporate, very structured area to like a startup world.
Or even from the education space, university.
Straight from university, straight to here. Because I mean, in university, as you may know, I've gone through university. Here, it's not the typical Kenyan one, but I do know you come out in a very structured way, and you feel that
the world is an ordered place that I should fit into.
And there are policies and manuals for everything. You know what to do. You know what to do. Like there are the directions at every turn.
Right. There are signs.
There are signs. Like you've been told. You know everything.
And things don't turn that often. You're usually on a highway.
Exactly. And if you go into a bank that's been there for 100 plus years or 40 plus years, you'll probably find that.
Right.
But if you're going out there, maybe as an entrepreneur, going there into a startup, you're gonna find that that's really not the case.
Not at all.
And you have to be as malleable and flexible as dough.
Yeah.
Like you need to fit into that shape.
Right.
If that's what is required of you at that moment.
Right.
You need to become good at it, and after that, you need to also understand that I'm gonna change again. Like
right.
Things are gonna move.
Don't get comfortable.
Exactly. Don't get comfortable. The company is gonna change, and my position is gonna change. It's gonna require a new skill from me. So you find so many guys, logging into Coursera, Udemy, guys, doing, I want to do a financial modeling course online. I want to do digital marketing course online. Because you see so many guys upscaling. You see so many guys, now I want to learn how to code. Because now you have to be really, really super flexible in how things are changing in the environment.
Yeah, that's the 21st century, right?
Yep.
It's an innovation, entrepreneurship world that we are kind of really in, right? Because in a very real way, a lot of the legacy businesses are struggling to keep up.
Yeah.
Right? There's a new shift. It's real across the board, right? What an exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Building the African future.
Yep.
With people like you, man, I'm so excited about what we're going to do together.
Same here.
I look forward to a long-lasting partnership, friendship. You've been so helpful to me in so many different ways. Always available. Just a top-notch dude. And for me, my vision, man, is to just build a network of capable people, and we will do great things. That's it.
Yeah, I believe so.
Right?
And I'm very happy with what you've done with Impact Africa. I keep on saying it's not too many people who have come and actually created a community of what and talk about what startups are going through. And I think you've done an amazing thing. Actually, thank you for coming back home.
No, man. And
we hadn't started this yet, so it's amazing.
Yeah, and one of the challenges we're going through as an organization is people think we do podcasts, right? They don't realize that podcasts are a very strategic thing for us because it gives us presence, right?
Exactly, yeah.
But also it serves the community, it's our CSR, and so on and so forth. We see this podcast as potentially the first, toehold into building a media company. So at Impact Africa Network, what we do is we build companies. We incubate talent and put them into a structured process. We're a startup studio to build companies. And now I've already told you what I was going to ask you. So I'm asking all our guests, what does Impact Africa Network do? What do you know? What do you think we do?
I think you guys do a lot of hand-holding to entrepreneurs on what they're the key skills they're supposed to know to scale their businesses. So I feel like you guys are an earlier stage incubator than most of the other incubators out there. So I feel like you guys really foster the ideation stage, and get these guys. You expose them to either mentors, or you try to bring them and try to equip them with the skills early enough before putting them out there to the next point of growth. So I feel, am I right? Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of touching on some of the key themes, but fundamentally what it is we take in. I don't believe, like, if you look at the founder of the company you work at, right? They hadn't done it before, and they just decided to do it, and they were learning on the job. So there is no kind of stage where you become the person who can start something, right? If you even reach if you graduate high school, I don't even know. There's no level. So my view is, like, I decided to say, okay, look, we have a lot of young talent in our market coming out of campus, very capable people. They're just not exposed to a situation that can allow them to learn the process of creating and building something. Now, you could do that in theory, take people to Strathmore schools, whatever, or you could just say, hey, let's just build companies. Yeah. So it's fundamentally, we're a startup studio, and our core is to just provide these internships where we are working on building companies. That's it. There is no...
And this company is in-house or like...
In-house, right? So it's not about, like... I don't believe this notion that they're these magical... Of course, they are very talented entrepreneurs, but that's a small percentage of the population. Most startups are not built by one person, as you know, right? Yeah. In fact, startups are not built by one person. They're teams. Yeah. And so from the beginning, we optimize for teams of people to work on a market opportunity. And it's not so much about the freaking idea. People always ask, whose idea is it? Yeah. Idea? It's not. It's about execution. So what we do is we take young talent, put them into this environment, focus on market opportunities from market research. Some of them are already there are a lot of great companies that are not being built yet. So are we going to wait for somebody to say, I'm going to be the one building it? We just go after opportunities as we see them. Yeah. And we provide 12-month internships. And we have this process where we give an idea or an opportunity to 12 months to live. And there's a timeline. We're going from market research to traction. That's the whole move. Impact Africa Network has stake in these companies. That's our long-term sustainability plan. We're set up as a nonprofit, but that's what we're doing. And even our people have stake in those companies at a small level. But that's what we do. So I've been challenged with this notion of now telling the public what Impact Africa Network is. We're a startup studio, and our mission is very simple. We want to change the African narrative, build great African companies, establish an ecosystem of high performance, high integrity, and high collaboration. And if you go to our website, you'll see what we say is we're on a mission to ensure that young, talented Africans, people on the continent, have a chance at participating in the digital transformation of Africa as creators and owners, and not just as consumers of that transformation. So that's what we do.
Oh, I love it.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it for real.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Thank you so much
for coming through.
Thank you.
And